Hello everyone and welcome to Total Quilter Monthly for January 2019. My name is Mark Garetz and I'm a National Floriani educator. And this month we're going to continue working with text. Last month we did some basic text, got into it a little deep and made a quilt label, but what we didn't have time to cover was text on a circle, so that's what we're going to cover today. So before I get into text on a circle, I want to just do a quick review of text in general, but for a complete review, you should look at last month's video, which was text and making a quilt label, and that was in December of 2018. So please refer back to that for the complete details. But just in general, the way we get text into Total Quilter or My Decorative Quilter is with this icon right here that looks like a T. And you'll notice there's a little drop down next to it. If I click that little arrow, I've got two options. The big T, again, is for regular text, and the text on a circle icon is for text on a circle. So let's just review regular text real quick. I click it, and you'll see that my cursor changes into an A. And if I click anywhere on my screen now, I'm going to get the default text of my text with the last font that I used. So I'm going to double click my magnifying glass, which again is a shortcut for Zoom to Fit, so you can see a little better what's going on here. And this is again what we call text mode, and you'll notice that this looks different than our normal selection mode. And if I go to normal selection mode by clicking my normal select icon here, you'll see that the screen changes. I've got this bounding box with sizing handles here on the corners and on the sides. I've got a rotate icon at both opposite bottom left and top right corners. But if I go back into text mode, and again the way I do that is with my text selected, going back to my T and selecting T again for normal text mode, you'll notice that the screen changes. I no longer have a solid line here. I have a dotted line. Again, that means this is the envelope that the text goes in, and I've got different controls. I've got these little square icons at the corners, and those are my envelope controls, along with these black dots here in the center, which is my text warping controls, also part of the envelope controls. But up here at the top, I've got this little house or home plate icon, and this icon allows me, when I click and drag it, to proportionally resize the text. And I'll just show you how that works here. If I click and drag inwards, my text proportionally gets smaller. And if I click and drag the opposite direction, I click and drag that, my text gets bigger. And this visual control here is the same as the height control here. So as I change this one changes, and I can also change it numerically. This little house or home plate icon on its side at the lower right hand corner, this one is my width control. So this varies the width of the text without changing the height, and it changes it as a percentage of the height. So if I click and drag this inwards, I will get a smaller width. Okay, so you see I'm now at 87.7% of the width, and if I drag it outwards, I will get wider text, but you'll notice that the text height is not changing. So this is a very interesting way of getting things to fit. And then I'll just go back to 100% here. I'll just do an undo to get back to that. And, or actually, let me undo twice to get back to 100%. There we go. And you'll notice also I've got these little orange squares and blue diamonds. And again, clicking the orange square lets me take control of a character. Clicking a diamond lets me change the spacing between the characters. And lastly, down here I've got a diamond, which allows me to change the slant left or right. And up here I've got my blue rotate control. So now those controls work a little bit differently when we get into text on a circle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this by selecting it, and then I'm going to press the delete key on my keyboard to get rid of it. And we are going to put in now some text on a circle. So I'm going to click the down arrow by the T, but instead of selecting the big T now, I'm going to select the text on a circle. And when I do that, it is going to bring in my text on a circle here when I click. So I've got my text now. You can see it's on a circle. If I zoom out, you'll be able to see the whole circle. So I'm going to zoom back in. Let me double click my magnifying glass so we can zoom in. And let's take a look at what's going on here. So I'm going to go back to text on a circle. I'm going to be in text mode. I should be in text mode. And I am. I can tell because when I'm in an area where there isn't text, I've got my A. And I can still see all of my special icons here. But you'll notice not all of them are there, and some of them look a little bit different. So let's go over the various controls that we have for text on a circle. Before we look at the visual controls, let's look over here at our properties box. You'll notice that there's an upper text line and a lower text line. We'll get to the lower text line in a minute. Selecting the font is the same as selecting a font that we covered in last month's lesson. And we have not as many controls over here that we had with normal text. We have a height, a width, and a spacing control. This again controls the spacing between the characters in an even way. And those are the only controls we have. We don't have any of the slant controls or the rotate or any of those things because they work so much differently with text on a circle. So let's go over the controls visually and then you'll see how they relate to over here. So this control right here, this blue dot, this has no equivalent to what's going on in regular line text. Because what this controls is not only the rotation of the whole circle, but also the diameter, the inner diameter of the arc of the circle. So it does two things depending on how you click and drag. So when you hover over it to select it, you'll notice that it turns into a double-headed circular arrow. And when I click and drag downwards, my circle diameter gets smaller. And as I click and drag upwards, my circle diameter gets bigger. And I can also at the same time drag side to side to rotate the circle around and also move it, but I can move it with my standard move control as well. So I'm going to go back approximately to where we started because I want to zoom out a little bit so you can see this a little bit better, how it's working. So I'm going to kind of zoom down a little bit or scroll down so you can see it. I'm going to hover over that little blue arrow, that little blue circle, click, and now I'm going to drag upwards so you can see how the inner diameter of the circle gets bigger and the outer diameter is going to track it. And if I drag inwards, you'll see how the inner diameter of the circle gets smaller. Now you'll notice as I do that, the text spreads out or comes in a bit to match the diameter. Now we still have some other controls over that, but this is an important control, and you can see that I can rotate it around to any orientation I want at the same time. So when I let off the mouse, it's going to assume its new position, and I'll undo to go back to where we were. So the reason that this is a very useful control is that usually what we're trying to do when with circular text is fit the text to something that's in the center, usually a circular object or some other kind of object. So with an object in here, then we use this control to adjust it. So let me just show you how that would work. So I'm going to select the text in normal mode so I can press my delete key to delete it. And I'm going to put a circular object on the screen. And to do that, I'm going to use my embellishments, and I'm going to use the feathers folder, and I'm going to use this first one here, feathers 01A. I could use B because it's the same diameter, but this one's more interesting. It's got more stuff in the center. So I'm going to select that. Let's move it so that it's in the center of our screen. And if you remember, when we work with embellishments, they have two parts to them. They have an artwork part that's an outline and an inner part that's our stitches. And we don't really care about that artwork outline for this, so I'm going to actually just delete it so we're not confused by it. So I've selected it here in my sequence view, and I'm going to press my delete key to get rid of it. And that's really optional. You could leave it, it wouldn't affect anything. So when we bring in circular text, we want to kind of make the circle match usually a circular style object here, as I said earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in some circular text. So I'm going to click to select it, and I'm just going to click anywhere on my screen. Now, one of the properties of circular text is if I have an object already on the screen, no matter whether it's circular or not, Total Quilter is going to actually try and match the size of this with my text circle. Rather than putting it in a random height, it's going to put it so it kind of matches. So if I click here, you'll see that it comes in and it tries to do it. It's not optimal, but that's why we have our control. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click my inner dot here and bring it down to where I've got the spacing from my other object the way I want. And you'll notice that it is centered on that object, which is nice. So if I get that there, now my text is centered over this object. Now for this size of text, it looks a little small for my object. So I could spread it out to go around, but I also want to make my characters bigger. So I can use this top black circle here to do that. So this is actually the equivalent of the height control here. So if I click and drag that, it will make my characters taller. But look at what's happening at the bottom. You'll notice that the inner diameter of my circle is not changing. And that's really useful because, like I said, usually what we want to do is we want to match that inner diameter to something and then adjust our text afterwards. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and have it be my text up there on the top. And now I kind of like the way that looks. And I could rotate this around by using this icon here to move it around a little bit if I want to center it a little bit differently. And I can also use my width control either numerically over here or this black dot, which is my width control, to adjust the squishing or stretching of the characters, and that's going to make them either come a little bit closer together or spread them apart. So I'm going to show you the effect that that will have. So whoops, I didn't want to do that. I moved it accidentally. Let me undo, and I'm going to wait till I get over the black dot there. You'll see my cursor changes to a crosshair. Oh, I moved the mouse when I clicked, so I'm going to try one more time. Here we go. So I'm clicking and dragging, and you'll see how as I do that, everything is staying within my parameters, but the text is spreading out, it's stretching, or I can make it very tiny or stretch it out even more. So if I want it to go here, it's telling me a warning that I've made my satin segments too large, so I'm going to undo that because I don't want to do that. So maybe I would do it a different way. I can change my spacing without actually stretching out the characters. So let me change my spacing to a 1. Now this is only done numerically over here, and click apply, and that'll spread them out a little bit. And I could go to a 2 if I want to spread them even more. So let me do a 2 and click apply, and you can see it's spreading them out without widening out my stitches, which was bad. All right, so this is how the text works on a circle, and I still have individual control over the characters like I did with regular text with these orange squares here. So I could click and drag, say, the Y out of position if I want, or rotate it, or do all those things. I usually don't want to do that, so I'm going to do an undo. But I can also fix inner character spacing the same way I could on a regular line. So I can move the E closer to the T, but you'll notice that everything else kind of moves at the same time. So it kind of affects everything when it's text on a circle. So I don't like that. I'll move it back. So by playing with all these controls, you can get the size of the text, the inner diameter of the text, and the spacing of the characters all controlled easily, and usually the easiest way to do that is to do it visually, unless you need exact numbers, which you can do over here. So let's take a look now at what happens if I want the text to be on the bottom. So if I want the text to go all the way around, and I want it to be a single line and kind of look like it would look on a life preserver, like I would come over here and I might type in, this is a line of text. So I have a lot of text and click apply. I probably have so much text that it's going to wrap over itself. So that's what it did. So I'm going to change my spacing back to 0 and click apply. And we'll see if that pulls it together some more. It did. So you can see now it goes, goes all the way around, and it goes upside down as it goes around. And if you want that effect, that's how you do it. You leave everything on one line. But if you wanted to have a line be on the top and a line be on the bottom and both be face up, then we might put, this is the top, and I might put on the bottom, this is the bottom, and I click apply. And I might have too much text to fit, but we'll see. Yes, I do. Okay, so let's make everything a little bit smaller. So I'm going to do that by using my height control here to spread it out until, or actually not spread it out, but you can see now I've got, this is the top and this is the bottom. And I did that visually here with this control, but I could have done it over here with my height control. So you can see now how visually easy it is to control the text on a circle. And that completes this lesson for Total Quilter. So I want to thank you for watching, and I want to invite you to come back next month when we'll have another exciting topic for learning about Total Quilter.